Yo, what's going on, guys? Brian and Jim here from DrinkABeerandPlayAGame, and welcome to our first in a series of South Park video game reviews. Today, we're going to be checking out South Park on the N64.
Released in 1998, this was developed by Iguana Software and published by Acclaim. Iguana Software made a lot of games back in the day, especially on the N64, and they also made Turok 2, which is the engine that this game was based off of. It was also ported to the Sony PlayStation and Microsoft Windows. But from our research, those two ports are actually worse than the N64, so we figured we'd go with the best version out there.
So graphically, don't hang me on the cross for saying what I'm about to say, most N64 games don't exactly look crisp. But this game in particular, look at the draw distance on this. I mean, they just cover it up with snow and kind of fog, almost like Silent Hill in a way, but it's so goddamn short that sometimes when you run into enemies, they're already there. Now, I will be fair, the sprites themselves, they kind of look like 3D rendered images of the South Park characters we know and love. But it's still really tough to look at, and when there's too many things on the screen, it can get almost jittery like early NES games. I don't know how to describe it. Just look at this footage. It's not great. I can't even say in my own opinion it gets the job done. So as you see from our scores, I gave it a 4, Jim gave it a 5. I'm going to add 2 beers because that goddamn draw distance is just pathetic. Jesus Christ. I'm going to keep going on and talk about the sound. The best thing this game has going for it is some of the one-liners, but it's also one of the more annoying things, as very quickly they run out of things to say and you'll just hear it repeated over and over and over again. And don't even get me started on those goddamn turkeys and their annoying ass gobbling. It just drives me crazy to the point where I want to mute the TV when I have to go through levels with the goddamn turkeys in it. Jesus Christ! Other than that, the music is just really bland in this game, and I guess the cutscenes are actually pretty well done, so I can't hate too much for that sound, but no. The sound in this game, it's pretty goddamn awful. And as you see from our scores, I gave it a 4, Jim gave it a 3. I think Jim gave it a 3 because he had more experience with this game and had to hear the goddamn turkeys a hell of a lot more to me. And speaking of turkeys, you know what? I'm going to go with Jim's score. I'm adding 3 beers just for how goddamn ear-piercing this fucking turkey is.
Alright, the control. This will be interesting. Since it runs off the Turok 2 engine, you use the C buttons to move forwards, backwards, and to strafe left and right. Then you use the stick to, look up and down and basically to show the direction of your guy. I'm going to say this right now and I'm probably going to get killed for it. But if there were some tweaks done, this would have been a better control scheme than GoldenEye. And it would have held up a hell of a lot better than that game too. Don't get me wrong, GoldenEye at the time was the crowning achievement, but you try to play it now, it's pretty rough. This game actually feels closer to the twin stick design that we're all used to today. So, the main problem comes down to the analog stick. And I don't kill the N64 controller like most people do, but this stick, it's just way too twitchy the way they have it set up. You minorly move it and you're flying all over the place. And when you're not trying to move it, honing in on an exact shot is a nightmare. I highly recommend you go into the options and turn on the crosshairs, because not having crosshairs defaulted in a first-person shooter is just really weird. Now, the game isn't as unplayable as you're going to think it is when you first pop it on. It'll grow on you. Give it some time, it isn't actually the worst thing in the world. And it's a real missed opportunity because of, I don't know, laziness or just lack of experience, but it is what it is. We both gave it 4s. It's so close to being alright, but it just misses the mark because you're going to be fighting the control in a lot of key spots. Beer-wise, I'm going to add another 2 beers for the twin stick almost control that you have. On that note, I'm going to move right into the gameplay, and I guess I'll start where I left off and talk about the platforming elements. There aren't a lot of them, but they are in there, and they can be really annoying at times. There aren't, like I said, there aren't a lot, but when you do have them, they seem to really make them a lot harder and more involved than they need to be. And there's certain sections where you got to go up a ton of ledges, and if you miss one, you're falling all the way down and you got to go back up. And judging your jumps is really tough. It takes a real nuanced kind of combination of the top C button and the R button, and you can overshoot your jumps very easily. Getting into the main crux of the game though, it is a first-person shooter where you go around and basically you're just killing enemies and advancing through the levels. There are special enemies in the game known as tanks, and there's a different one for each main level. The purpose of the tanks is they spawn more common enemies, but when they take enough damage, they start to run towards the town of South Park, and you have to kill them before they reach the sign that will transport them to town. Because if they reach the town, it'll trigger a mini-game after the level where you have to kill them before they destroy the entire town. So that's kind of a unique element, and it kind of keeps you on your toes, and it really makes you have to go after these specific enemies. Also, at the end of all the main stages is a boss fight, and honestly, the boss fights are pretty easy in this game. Except for the last boss in the game, who is a frigging nightmare to fight, and an exercise in pure frustration with the control scheme as well. Going outside of that though, there's a multiplayer mode which is actually pretty fun, and one of the redeeming factors of this game. You can have up to 4 players, and while it can get pretty choppy with 4 players, it's actually dumb and goofy enough that you can have a fun time with it, just running around and smacking each other with piss snowballs. Another thing I want to bring up is the weapons in the game, and they're actually pretty fun and creative. You have transformation rays, you have Cal bazookas, you have super version, you have 2 different attack types for each weapon, which is a nice touch. So, say snowballs, you have regular snowballs and piss balls. The dart gun, you can have rapid fire or shoot one big one that you charge up. So all that being said, at its core, it's a pretty simple game. I'll say the first 3 levels can actually be pretty fun. The game encourages exploration because you can go straight forward and follow the direction signs, but you're going to miss out on a lot of armor, a lot of Mr. Hankies which give you invincibility, and all the good weapons too. One annoying thing I also have to mention is that in the later levels the difficulty really spikes, and the enemy popping out of nowhere will really catch you by surprise, and you're going to need to memorize these levels. All that being said, we both gave it 5s. And it probably got boosted because of the fun that we had with multiplayer mode. But outside of that, there is fun to be had even in the single player mode. It's certainly not a perfect game, and certainly not the best single player experience of its time. Beer wise, I'm gonna add another 3 beers, because you're either gonna get drunk and just laugh at the game, or you're gonna get drunk, pissed off, and turn it off. So the more beer the better, because good luck with that jumping.
Holy hell, was Jim long-winded.
Ah, my throat!
I'm making this super short. Jim hit on every point I was going to talk about as far as originality. This game was Turok with a South Park skin and South Park-inspired weapons that we found we've never seen before. Name another game where you can throw a piss-covered snowball, like Jim said. With that being said, we both gave it 5s. It definitely didn't offer a whole lot new to the genre itself, but it felt like a unique experience in the end. I'm not even gonna add a beer. It was fine.
I'm going to keep this short too. Replayability. It mainly comes in single player from the difficulty of the game and how you have to memorize certain parts, especially in the later game, and the multiplayer, which we said is fun. So, we both gave it 6s, and you know what? I think we've had enough beers up to this point. You won't get far if you drink anymore.
So overall, this is a game that is fucking hated across the internet, and we can understand why. But in all reality, if you're buying this game, you should be a South Park fan, and if you are a South Park fan, you will find some fun throughout the game. Putting that aside, no, it's not the greatest shooter ever, but it's also not the worst. Like Jim mentioned while talking about gameplay, there is some actual fun to be had about just exploring this game. With that being said, it does get a 4 from us. It's definitely below average, but it's not absolutely god-awful. When you round up all of our scores together, it comes to a 4.6, so as you can see, it's still technically below average, and if you ever see this game out, Only get it if you're a diehard South Park fan, and do not spend any more than $3 to $5 for this. It would be a waste of money. When considering what type of beer we wanted to pair with this game, we knew we wanted to go with a light lager. And what better than Coors Light? Coming out of Colorado, just like South Park, this is a beer you can chug away and away, and it's cheap, and let's face it, this isn't the best game, so we're not going to give you the best beer. Have fun with it, kids. Just remember, drink your beers and play your games responsibly. As always, guys, thanks for checking out this video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you give us a thumbs up, leave some comments, or better yet, why not subscribe? Till next time, guys, cheers.